Hello, everyone. Um, Once again, I want to thank you all for watching my videos, listening my lectures, and liking them a lot. Please recall in the first part of this lecture entitled How to Write a Scientific Paper That Journals Take Seriously. I have talked about various sections of scientific research paper. I wanted to reiterate that effective writing is a skill that needs to be developed by the scientists for effective and convincing communication and expression. After putting enormous efforts and labor into research and generating data, it becomes imperative to write our papers in such a way that journals take them seriously and consider them for publication. This can happen only when we ourselves learn and teach our students and colleagues to develop good writing skills. I may not be wrong if I say that writing is not a writing, but rewriting of a writing is the best and effective writing. So what I mean to say here is that good writer always emphasize on rewriting her own writings in order to bring quality and effectiveness into their writings. I hope you all would agree with this. Scientific writing is very technical and predicated on the rigors of scientific inquiry. So it must reflect same precision as demanded in the research process. Scientific writing should be written in a very skillful and precise manner so that misunderstandings and misinformation among the readers can be prevented, eliminated, and readability can be generated. We all have difficulties, and I fully agree with everyone. We have agonies, we have hardships in writing our scientific research papers. And we all want our papers taken seriously by the journals and journal editors. In many cases, papers are returned by the editor in a matter of few days without even being considered for reviewing. So here is my take that instead of raising doubts on the editors, demonizing the referees, that's what most of us do. So we shouldn't do that. Instead of that, we must try to find out why the paper was returned and what should we do to increase the chances of our papers getting accepted. Redundancies, verbosity, ambiguities, and of course the language are some of the issues preventing editors to accept papers. Please do not think my lecture is a remedy for all which provides quick recipe of getting papers accepted. No, not at all. Not at all. But it presents correct ways to increase the chances of papers being considered positively and favorably by the journal editors. So let us start with part 2 of writing scientific research paper that journals take seriously. Here we go. Your tables must be self-explanatory, precise, with some statistical values. Well-prepared table removes confusion, ambiguities, and misinformation, bringing clarity. If the data is large, it can be broken in parts. Tables should have appropriate captions, and the results may be presented with some statistics. Footnotes can be given if required, and you may always refer tables in your text to avoid verbosity. Here are some examples of correct and incorrect tables. The table on the left is a correctly prepared table which has all the characters at the right places. For example, You have units for the for mortality, which is in percentage. You have the units of chemical concentrations in percentage, and you have durations given in days. In this table also shows relevant statistical values in the form of range, mean standard deviation, and coefficient of variations, besides p-values mentioned in the figure legend. This way you can save a lot of space in results section and making your table more meaningful. In contrast, the table on right hand side is inaccurately prepared where many information are missing. For example, Aedes aegypti doesn't have any unit, it doesn't have any parameter. The concentrations don't have the units here. The coefficient of variation doesn't have any unit here. So same stands true for the figures. That they should be self-explanatory and consistent and precise. Remember that figures can present large data in small spaces and present a bird's eye view of your finding. They should be appropriately captioned, and the results, wherever possible, must be presented with little statistics. Footnote, if necessary, provide it, and refer your tables, your results to respective figures to avoid redundancies. It is true that a picture is worth of 1,000 words, and so is the figure, which must be very clearly prepared and data presented must stand out. Please ensure that X and Y scales are properly defined with the parameters and scale, and your figures must include well-defined and matching captions and statistics, as well as a well-defined legend. Now, I want to show you the correct and incorrect figures. On the left, it is correctly drawn graph, and this graph shows X and Y scales with proper parameters, units on the bars with different colors defined in the legend. This graph also shows the statistical data in the form of Tukey's multiple range test and p-values. And these are the Tukey's values which compare individual means here in the form of a bar. And in contrast, the incorrect figure on your right hand side lacks few aspects, such as it is written only species. What is species? Of course, it should be mosquito species. It does not have unit for a y-axis, and no statistical comparisons done for the bars, because in this study Tukey's multiple range test was applied. So these values should be provided here to compare the individual bars. So in a way, it is difficult to draw any conclusion out of this figure, and they may be the reason, many times they may be the reason for the paper rejection. So I always advise to prepare your figures with the standard fonts, with well-selected scales, clear symbols, and data sets. The dependent variable must be plotted on the x-axis and the independent on y-axis, and your figure must have a clear and descriptive. Although it is tough to write, but discussion is always my favorite section of the paper, where you are not going to reiterate your results, materials, and methods or statistics, but you will be analyzing your findings, explaining reasons, and interpreting your hypothesis. And you may start a discussion by reiterating your question and explaining the answer of what did you find, generate your thoughts, ideas, and explanations of the implications of your study, followed by highlighting limitations if there are any, and remedies to overcome them. Negative findings that you have mentioned in the results can be discussed here with sufficient explanations and reasons. Discussion is all about writing, or presenting an interesting story, and that all the readers would like to read until the end. Hence, keep your discussion to the point and precise by comparing your results with those who have already made analytical case studies, or justify your finding by using relevant references. Always try to avoid repetitions while you compare results. Do not include any result, do not include any materials and methods. Just keep it simple and straight. And in the end, you may include a couple of lines about where your study would lead to. It is always a good idea that you end your discussion with an open question. Conclusions, if allowed by the journal, then it must include in just 2 or 3 sentences answering the research question that you have hypothesized, with the most significant outcome, and confirming or rejecting the hypothesis. Coming on to keywords, choosing keywords is the author's wisdom, which must have not more than 6 to 8 words and at least one word coming from each section. Always consider journal criteria, subject relevance and importance while choosing keywords, because they are the keys to unlock your paper by the readers or journal editors. I consider ranking authors is the most difficult job, since one must balance between ethics and individual preferences, performances, and contributions. Nonetheless, it is always an issue between the members of the research team that needs to be resolved by them only with understanding and agreements. I would, however, present certain criteria and discuss them for your benefits. Often we come across with power relations such as consenting and romantic authorships. It's okay up to the authors, but it is unethical. The second one is more genuine and ethical, where authors are ranked as first, second, third, or fourth based on their substantial contributions, experimental designing, data collection, data analysis, revising, writing, or presentation. So the ranks are given depending upon the quantum of the work performed by an individual, which is very fair. Sometimes partnerships also pose challenges, especially if there are interests of supervisors, senior lecturers, collaborators who are not part of the investigation, but they wanted to be part of the paper. Another unethical criterion of ranking authors is rewards, where people want their names as first authors in order to gain prestige, promotion, increase in salary, etc. There is always ethical stigma attached to authors' placement, who all are responsible for scientific integrity, conflict of interest, plagiarism, and accountability. More importantly, giving gift, guest, or ghost authorships to the individuals. This is conflict of interest which must always be. The last but not the least, in the end of the paper, you need to declare that the authors do not have any conflict of interest. Ensure that there should be none. I have seen papers being retracted because of conflicts if someone proves that thereafter. Um, It's basically the subject, of judgmental integrity of the team, which constitutes a conflict of interest, and which can be written like this, like secondary interest, teaching, administration, financial, or vocational pursuits. Compromises judgmental integrity of the person in conducting scientific research. All these factors contribute to conflict of interest. So if you have any which belongs to these categories, please always mention it in the end of the paper. Conflict of interest also a part of nepotism, self dealing, and excess compensation. As far as the acknowledgements are concerned, it's a prerogative of the authors. That's the first thing I want to say. And it has nothing to do with the paper acceptance or rejection. As I said, it's purely at the author's discretion, and there are no right or wrong ways to write it. Still, there are certain norms to write it if you want to note. Mention associated fellowships, materials, chemicals, animal materials, or any techniques that you have borrowed. Show your appreciation to the supervisor or colleagues who have secured research grants for you, along with the grant numbers. Praise individuals who have helped you generating your research idea, and also affiliated institutions for the facilities they have provided, and funding agencies for the financial help. And finally, the references. There are various ways to cite your references, but the best is what the journal guidelines say. However, the best is to avoid using more than 35 to 40 references in a paper, and many of them should be recent. Avoid in-house citations. In-house citations are those, for example, your own, and those belonging to your colleagues working in your department, because using many of them may amount to self-plagiarism. Whatever you cite, whatever references you refer to, they must be accurate, correct, and the information that you cite should be correct. Otherwise, many times misinformation also amounts to paper rejection. It's always a good idea to cross match your references in the text as well as the list of references, and always avoid to use references as footnotes unless and until the journal says. Um, just, just an idea to give that idea to you that how you can reduce the verbosity of your paper, and that is by reducing the numbers. For example, if you have to use 2 or 3 words, to express yourself, it's better to use one word. For example, very powerful can be written as compelling. Very short can be written as very brief. Very quick can be written as rapid. Very simple as basic, or experimented side by side may be written as concurrently tested. Just an idea, and there are so many words that you can find. And just an example that how you can write a crispy writing, precise. You can have a look on this verbose sentence. How effective parasitic mites be on the adult mosquito depends on future studies investigating detrimental effects of mites on population dynamics, reproductive rates, dispersal capabilities, host specificity, and distribution of mites with particular reference to adult mosquitoes. So I rewrote that sentence, and I rewrote it by removing some of those striked off part of the above 4 sentences, making it 2.5 sentence. And the revised sentence becomes: future studies on population dynamics, reproductive rates, dispersal capabilities, host specificity, and distribution of mites will determine the effects of mites on mosquitoes. So this, shortening of that sentence is still retains the meaning and the conception of the previous. All right, let us learn a little bit about certain rules which lead to paper rejection. The first one is inadequate scholarship. So our paper should have significant degree of scholarship. So if various sections like introduction, materials and methods, execution of research, statistical analysis, data analysis, presentation, discussion, and so on and so forth, if these sections do not have significant scholarship, editors have significant reason to return the papers right away back to the authors. The second one is clarity in writing. As I said earlier, that writing is very important and it should have clarity, very clearly written, and it's very important. Confused writing, redundancies, discrepancies, verbosity, they all lead to paper rejection. The third one is if the subject of the paper is out of journal's scope, then again the journal editor has enough reason to send the paper back. So make sure and ensure that whenever you send your paper, make sure that your paper subject of your paper is within the scope of the journal. The fourth one is too preliminary. If the subject of your paper is too preliminary, too general, too basic, then journal editor is not going to accept your paper. Insufficient novelty, and that's really one of the really important point, because why you are publishing paper and why journal is accepting paper is because both of you think that you are going to submit a good work and journal is going to accept a good work. So there should be novel ideas, there should be original ideas, new ideas presented in the paper. Only then that paper will stand firm on the ground and editors will be compelled to get it reviewed. And lastly, intentional plagiarism. Again, it's a big no-no, and if your paper has intentional plagiarism, which can be detected and fined, then editor will return your paper right away. Accidental plagiarism, inadvertent plagiarism, sometimes it happens like few words are matching here and there. Those matches are unintentional, accidental, which are okay. You don't have to worry about them. Sometimes, like in materials and methods, some of the sequences have a typical wording, a typical language, and there you will be helpless. You won't be able to rephrase it. You won't be able to write in a different way. So even if it's word by word copied and you cited that sentence, that's fine, it'll be okay. The thing is that you should give enough and sufficient credit to the original source. All right, so in the end, my advice for everyone is please evaluate your papers using these categories. See yourself if your paper is ready and qualifies for the chosen journal. Secondly, please make your writing easy for reviewers to evaluate your work and its scope. Hence, the authors must check if their paper fits with the scope and brings quality of the science to the readers. All right, so in the end, I wanted to thank you all for watching and listening to me. As I said, that good paper writing is a prerequisite for good researchers and academicians. So please be informed that without having strong skills and good traits of writing, it may not be easy to explain and present your research findings, your data, in a way that journals would like to see. So once again, I thank you all for appreciating my little efforts in disseminating knowledge to the students, colleagues, and collaborators. Every 2 weeks, I upload a lecture on some important topics of scientific research. Please stay tuned for the next lecture, which will be uploaded in about 2 weeks' time. Please take care, stay safe and healthy. Until then, goodbye.